I love how during that theme song, there's this little hint of a cowbell, and it always brings me back to that SNL skit with of course, cowbell. We need more cowbell.
Mm-hmm.
We need more cowbell. Yes, it is, of course, something besides the cowbell. It is, of course, NBA observations right here at the Lakers Fast Break. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for joining us for some good NBA talk and here to discuss what's going on with many parts of the NBA. Good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today with the Suave Report and the New Century Press. It is Calif Poncy. Calif, good to have you back, my friend. We need more cowbell.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I wish we could open the show here with a little bit different segment, but I think it's time to maybe sound some alarm bells around the league here.
I know. Well, it gives a lot of people some hope. And again, as someone who hosts a post-game show that tries to cut it real, I do have a lot of individuals that come in the chat that don't see it always as real as what it should be. And they will be on tomorrow night when the guys hopefully will be able to host the show for me because I'll be at a CES related event at the Bellagio. So I probably won't be able to host it, but they will host it. They will probably get a ton of guys saying, "Oh, we're right there, guys. We're right there." Because has the bottom dropped in Oklahoma City because they lost against Phoenix. And then, is it a back-to-back? Or was it? Okay, it was a back-to-back. They lost at home to the Charlotte Hornets, and that game was not even close. That game was 124-97. Absolutely a brilliant performance by the Charlotte Hornets. As I joked to you in the comments on our direct messaging, this was their championship in Charlotte to this evening. But all kidding aside, does this mean that there might be some cracks now showing in Oklahoma City?
So it's interesting. Until this game, I mean, if you look at their losses, it was the 3 San Antonio losses, which are potentially problematic for OKC because that's a matchup they're going to have for this season and for who knows how long they're going to have to deal with the Spurs. And so that's one that everyone rightfully maybe put their eyes on it and said this might be something. But like their loss to the Timberwolves a few weeks ago, they lost because Anthony Edwards made an outstandingly, ridiculously tough shot. Like very few can make. He made it. Last night against Phoenix, they lost because Devin Booker made a crazy shot for the win with less than a second left. So those two, it's kind of like, well, that just happens. What are you going to do? Both were really good defense and awesome superstar players made a play. Tonight, they got ran off the floor, which OKC maybe hasn't really done. Maybe they did it once or twice last season, but like it doesn't happen very often. The way they play just lends itself to they don't really get blown out, and they definitely don't get blown out by teams that are pretty bad like Charlotte. So, I mean, I think it's – I don't want to overreact because Sam Presti said this in his post-game presser after the Thunder won 58 games and lost to Dallas. He said one or two times every season the sky falls on any NBA team. There's always a stretch where every NBA team plays terrible, and it's how you respond to that really kind of defines the type of team you're going to be. And last season was unique because there never really was a sky falling moment on the Thunder in the regular season. In the playoffs, there was a few, and they responded well enough to win the championship. So we'll see. But to me, so sometimes you just want to point to the three-point shooting, and the three-point shooting differential was really crazy tonight with Charlotte. Charlotte was above 60% for most of the game. OKC was sub 40% from the field in the game. Like we shot 37% and just missed a lot of shots they're normally going to make. SGA's superpowers this whole season, or really why he's such a great player, is really how well he does on the margins. Like he's always so efficient and he doesn't really turn the ball over. And his efficiency just hasn't really been there against Phoenix or Charlotte the last 2 days in the way that we are used to seeing it. So cracks in the armor, I feel like maybe a bit of an overreaction, because I think the things that are maybe manifesting right now were predictable. Like back when we talked about it before the season, it was, well, what would be the demise of this potential dynasty in OKC? It's that the non-Shea offense can get rough at times. It did last year in the playoffs. It did in the regular season. When he's not on the floor, when he's not dominating, the offense can come and go because it's streaky shooters. It's Lou Dort, it's Crusoe, it's Cason Wallace, it's Aaron Wiggins, it's even Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren to a certain point. Like, they're just not necessarily guys you think of as a knockdown. They're guys who can get really hot and play well for stretches, but they can also go the other way. And that's really presented itself in this kind of 6-6 stretch in their last 12 games. But really, one thing that my colleague at the Suave Report, Adam, he lives in Oklahoma City, is able to go to all the home games and some of the road games. He noticed, and I've noticed as well, like the thing that was really so different about the Thunder and why they were such a regular season juggernaut is they just seem to play with this ferocious intensity all the time. That's just not really replicable or very, you don't see it very often in regular season basketball, especially from teams good as the Thunder. And really, since that cup game against the Spurs, they just have a lot of games. Like tonight against Charlotte was the best example we've had this season. Was they just didn't look like the more aggressive, motivated, want to be their team. And that's been one of their secret sauces for this last 2 years, is they always are that team. They always are diving on the floor for every loose ball. And that can't really be proven statistically. I mean, it kind of can because of their how they force turnovers, things like that. But just it when you watch OKC when they're really trying. Like they just have this presence about them that just isn't really replicable by any other team in the league. Maybe San Antonio can get there. And that just hasn't really been there the last few weeks. And I don't know why that is. I don't know. Maybe now that they won the championship, they're resting on their laurels a little bit and they just know they're biding time. I don't know if they're just playing poorly, or maybe there is some crack in the armor. Who knows? What have you seen? I've been kind of droning on here for a few minutes already.
No, please continue on that, because again, the rest of the league is trying to figure this out. And when they see an opening like this, obviously they're trying to understand that. I know that a lot of the instant detractors will note that SGA only went to the line 6 times. Being called every foul merchant, grifter, whatever you want to say. Again, coming from a team that has specialized in being foul merchants. Let's just be brutally honest with, even before Luka, with AD, LeBron, and there's Austin Reeves. Now you have Luka, who is one of the best at drawing fouls. SGA is one of the best at drawing the fouls. He didn't get his calls, so a lot of people will point to that. But I also pointed, like you said, to they're very inconsistent from the outside. And if SGA is not initiating that offense enough alongside Jalen Williams, if those guys aren't initiating enough, then they become a very stagnant and very ordinary half-court offense. And if you can keep them within that parameter, you limit your turnovers, which is a very big key as far as the turnovers are concerned. Although tonight, normally that's the case. Charlotte had 21 turnovers. So I have no idea. 21-7. 21-7 on the turnovers, yet they still blew them out by 30 almost. That's the part I don't get, because the key to beating OKC normally is limit the turnovers, limit the fouls against them, and they're very ordinary in that half-court offense. So while the turnovers weren't what we normally would see in a opposing win against OKC, the bad shooting kind of was, for what I'm seeing, because again, OKC has other ways usually to rely on offense outside of just utilizing their half court offense. But it looks like tonight, when they were pressed to do so, they couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, really, I couldn't watch the whole game. I could only watch the second half. I was in Lenox, South Dakota, watching some high school basketball there for the first half, but I got home in time for the second half, and it really was just. I do want to go on a little bit of a side here. I don't know. It's really been since that Timberwolves game when Chris Finch flipped out and got ejected in the first quarter against OKC. I just think I understand. I've always, while I don't think he's a merchant as what they say online, I can watch as unbiasedly as possible and say, like, there's some games when Shea or Luka or any of these stars who are high volume free throw guys can get some calls that you're.
Well, they understand. They begin to see what the refs are going to call and play like that accordingly. Even I had an argument with somebody about LeBron James because he only averages seven and a half free throws per game all time. He on the perimeter has been known to bait you into fouls. So don't tell me he's not a foul merchant of some type. Does he do it as often or to the level as a Luka or an SGA? No, he doesn't. Or Jimmy Butler? No, he doesn't. Those guys live a great part of their offense on the free throw line. But it is what I've said to him was, when you don't get the calls in the playoffs, how are you going to adapt and create your offense when you know you're not going to get as many calls as you do in the regular season? And we saw SGA do it to the point where they won a championship. So you can't argue there. Luka has yet to achieve that level. He got to the finals, but didn't take that step further. So I'm just saying this tonight, what I saw out of it, again, when they're not very efficient in the half court offense, which happens quite frequently, it's not surprising to me. It's just surprising factor is the turnovers and how much of a turnover differential Oklahoma City had, yet they still were not able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, for sure. That was it was really just a game. Like, Charlotte went up 21-9 in the first 4 or 5 minutes, and just OKC kind of leveled it back by the end of the first quarter. But then after that, it was bad. Like, Charlotte just kind of dominated the game, and it wasn't like OKC was doing what they wanted to defensively, other than Charlotte was just on fire from three. I bet if you filtered out clutch time, or not clutch time, garbage time, the opposite of clutch time, garbage time. There at the end, I mean, Charlotte was probably above 55% from three. They were just on fire, and Colin Knuppel and Brandon Miller at one point were a combined 13 of 14 from three in the fourth quarter.
50-90 is usually going to win you a great bit of games.
So that it was a game. I don't want to overreact. It was a game that shooting variance had a big role in it, but it was really OKC got what they wanted with the turnovers. But it was just something about, and this has been a recurring theme with them the last few weeks, and I don't know why, because it's not the formula that got them to a championship last year, and they'll turn it back on when they need to. I do want to say, just in the middle of this, I'm not particularly like concerned about, like, is the sky falling? Like, is there a huge hole? To be honest, just in watching them, it kind of just feels like maybe they're falling into a trap that a lot of really good teams fall into after they win the championship, which is we're kind of bored. And they're bored at the same time that they're really slumping from three as a team. And this reintegration of Jalen Williams, it was pretty good against Phoenix, but before that, it really has been a bit of a struggle. Like, the offense was in such a flow. OKC, at the time he came back, I believe, had the second best half-court offense per 100 possessions. And since he came back, they're really middle of the pack, or lower, I'm sure, at times in individual games. And so it's been kind of a struggle, and you can tell, like, Shea's numbers have gone down, which is to be expected, but they've gone down in a way that's kind of odd. Just in terms of, like, how much he has the ball, things like that just really weren't a factor last year. So I think it's just a weird stretch, but I did want to get on here and talk about it just because there's clearly some things, and really a lot of people who cover the league are going to point to the fact, like, the trade deadline's coming up and something's clearly wrong with something is wrong with OKC, and I lean nothing's wrong per se. I think this is a just unfortunate mix of maybe a little bit of stagnation in terms of their focus. Some bad 3-point shooting as a team for really a 10-15 game stretch now. And I mean, a bit of a lull from Shea. He's showing he's human, which he kind of hasn't for like 2 years now. He's having a bit of a weird 4 or 5 game stretch here that you're just not used to with a player of his caliber. So I don't know, but where I was going with that when I brought up the fouls earlier was just that I feel as if there's been a bit of an over. Shea, you can say he looks for fouls. He absolutely does. I think a lot of the all-time great players look for fouls. Me and my best friend were watching. I was on vacation with him over winter break, and we'll go back and watch old games sometimes. And he's a huge Trailblazers fan, so we went back and we were watching 1990 Finals Game 2. It was Pistons against the Trailblazers, and my generation, who grew up with LeBron and all these guys, has been told over and over, this generation would not make it. It was so much more physical. No one shot free throws. Everyone speared each other all the time. That's what the league was. I was watching the finals, and Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter were kind of getting some, they'd throw their forearms up and get fouls. This is just kind of what history presents when you're a great guard. And I think it's gone a little far the other way with Shea, where he hasn't shot double-digit free throws since December 5th in a game. And I think he had 6 tonight. The reality of a player like Shea, and I always want to bring up like Luka or Reeves or like Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, anyone like these high usage guards when they drive a lot, even Denny Avdia now, who's kind of become the ire of NBA Twitter this season. When you go to the rim as much as these guys do or have this high usage, you just get fouled a lot. And there's not a game that SGA plays where he gets fouled only 3 times. It just doesn't happen. Like, it's just not the nature of the sport and how good he is. And so I think maybe this overcorrection, I don't know why it's happening. I know that Zach Lowe had mentioned on his podcast a few months ago, like there was already some internal belly aching within the league about how the Thunder defended versus how Shea was versus the calls that the give and take of what OKC's allowed to do on defense versus what Shea gets calls on. And I think I'm sure the NBA has adjusted. We all know a few years ago, they adjusted the officiating heavily at the All-Star break to reduce free throws. So I don't know if there's maybe been a bit of a memo like, hey, look for some of the things he's doing to create contact and maybe don't call it as much. But I just think there's been a bit of an overcorrection. I just don't think he's getting the calls he should get, which some people are going to be upset by. They say, no, this is how it always should have been. He's always been a foul merchant and the foul baiter and all this. But the reality of I would implore you guys to just go look at every guard who maybe is within the statistical profile of SGA and tell me how many free throw games they shot or how many free throws they shot per game and tell me if he's really an outlier or if he's where he should be historically. Because I've done the research for both personal argument standpoint and just being educated on it. And the guys who are high free throw, high usage guys, so it's like Jordan, it's Kobe, it's Dwayne Wade, it's Iverson, they all kind of are within the same ballpark of free throws. And that's just statistically the level that Shea's been at for 3 years now. So I just kind of wanted to say that because I think it's really always been it's a conversation that can go one of two ways. It can be really educated or it can be really kind of uneducated and just, no, he foul baits. And I think it's overcorrected with Shea to an extent. And I don't know if Luka's going through the same thing right now or not. I haven't had a chance to catch a Lakers game since Christmas, I don't think. But I know I personally feel just watching most of the games that Shea's kind of going through a bit of an overcorrection on his free throw rate right now.
Once again, it is Calif Poncy along with me, Joe Glassford. Thanks again for watching and seeing some NBA observations. It's a little less than it was to start the season, but there's still 10 to 12 free throws a game, it looks like, for Luka. And then last night was LeBron, 10 to 12 for him as well. So, but with LeBron, it's always been the case where, yes, he does know how to draw fouls on the outside, but when he goes and takes on the inside, because he's so big and strong, it's the old Shaq theory. He's so big and strong that people are whacking him and they're not calling everything that they should. But that's something that's gone throughout his entire career. And you can say that about a Shaq or any larger than average NBA player. You could probably say that, especially with the degree of ability that they taking it inside, as both Shaq, LeBron, and some others have had that issue too as well. But again, that's a big issue as far as the foul. I mean, we may even dedicate an entire episode to the foul merchant study here before the season's up, but that would probably be a full hour plus conversation on that because, again, I have individuals, appreciate them watching and stopping for our post games, but yeah, they come on the show specifically to point out Luca's penchant for that. And I'm like, well, it goes deeper than that. And it's not just Luke, it's not just SGA or Trey Young or Harden or Denny Advia or whatnot. This goes back a long way to
Yes.
players smart enough to understand what these refs are going to call and not call during the regular season. The thing is, you define greatness in the playoffs is what happens when that whistle stops. And are they able to make up for their output that they're not getting at the free throw line in the playoffs through other means? And I'll just leave it at that. But getting to some other things that you and I want to talk about on this NBA observations. Interesting little thing that came by today as far as through the wire, and that I know you saw the reports that I guess Trey Young and his representatives are trying to work out a trade with the Atlanta Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like that marriage is coming to an acrimonious end, an unceremonial end per se. So with that, my friend, where do you think it's going to lean to next? I heard Washington.
Yeah.
Why, when you can clear all your cap space and start over? It's just he's a name. He could bring in some tickets, but he's for a team like Washington, he is not going to get you, in my opinion, to that next step. I don't know why you would use him as a foundational piece going forward. I think he is a piece and could be a piece to a winning situation. I mean, he made the Eastern Conference Finals in a bygone era, it seems now, but he can be a winning player to a certain team that uses his talents correctly. But yeah, if you're Washington and you just need to start over with fresh talent, I'm not sure that's the direction you would go.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems like the momentum of reporting that we've heard already is headed toward that he's probably headed to Washington at some point. And I honestly will not fully, but slightly disagree just because when you're
He would be a
Washington,
rental. He could be, I mean, because he could be a free agent as well. So they
yeah,
just say, you know what? All good. All
he
good.
could, but I honestly think if you're Washington, it sounds, well, now it depends what they give up, but it sounds like from what Mark Stein said, and he's the one who's reported his link to Washington,
Yes.
is that it would be something around CJ McCollum's expiring and maybe like Corey Kispert and maybe not heavy. If anything, I've seen that it would be Atlanta attaching draft compensation to just get off of Trey Young's next 2 years.
Well, that I do. Let's see that yeah. Okay. I was having a conversation with one of my regulars who always sends me the most interesting. I won't say crazy Laker Tom level trades. I'll just say interesting trades. And he put Kispert in one of them. I'm like, why would you want that contract for a Dalton Connect level defender? Who's going to make 13 million flat a year for the next 3 years. It does not make sense for that. But if that's the deal that Washington gets back and you give me Trey Young and pick, because Trey Young might want to walk at the end of the season, that's a different story, Caleb, because I was doing it under the premise that I would be giving out picks to Atlanta, which I wouldn't want to do.
See, I'm kind of in the same boat there. Like I think I'd do it if it were like if the young asset you had to give up was maybe like a Bub Carrington. But as soon as Atlanta just isn't really in a place to negotiate because now it's public. Like this is clearly headed towards a divorce, like you said. Mm-hmm. So they really have no leverage to say, well, we're going to hold on to this. Like, okay, go trade him somewhere else. And I imagine Atlanta would hear crickets, or he would have been on a different team about 18 months ago. Would be my guess. And so I mean, if in Washington, like. They are getting rid of a lot of cap space, and that's fine. But really the way they would use cap space would be to absorb contracts, maybe not quite as big as Trey Young's, but absorb contracts and pick up draft assets. So
that's only if they keep him or if they give him a contract this summer. If it's not, then it still comes off the books at the end of the season because Trey Young is probably looking to go somewhere else.
Well, see, he has a player option. I think this trade market for him and the fact that it's going to be like Washington. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was Sam Amick, so someone who knows what they're talking about, said that Sacramento isn't interested. And if Sacramento isn't interested in you, I think you should probably have to take a long, hard look in the mirror at what your value is going to be if you hit unrestricted free agency, because they're interested in anyone with a pulse. They have been for years. They gave DeMar DeRozan $25 million a year. I mean, like for 3 years, like they'll sign you if you're a free agent, and they apparently are not interested in bringing him in. So I honestly think he'd probably pick up that player option no matter where he goes, just because I don't think there's going to be a strong market as an unrestricted free agent. I don't know where it would be. And if it was going to be somewhere, it would be somewhere like Washington. It's just like, we just need, can someone come to our games? Like we want a reason for people to come watch our team play. And so I think it makes sense, but it's fully dependent upon the price. Like if Atlanta even asked for one, I'd probably trade like a protected swap in a few years, not now. In like 2029 down the line, I'd probably trade like a top 10 protected swap to Atlanta. His value is just not that high at this point. He's high usage. He's probably the worst defender in the league that has to play over 30 minutes a game for your team. He puts up a lot of stats, but Atlanta has very clearly been better without him this season. And that's really without a pure point. That's like Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing point guard, and he was an off guard on Minnesota, who they barely gave the ball last year. But it's not like they have some kind of weight. It's not like AJ Mitchell is coming off the bench for Atlanta to fill in for him, and they have maybe some young hidden gem. It's just a guy who isn't as ball dominant and just isn't as much of a sieve on defense. So I don't know. I think it looks like Washington, but I mean, do you have anyone else you're maybe circling on it?
I know when we've talked about this, both with you and with Legend, I know that there's been some others bandying around. I mean, the mess in Brooklyn with their 15 point guards, most of them rookies, that none of them have that kind of je ne sais quoi, so to speak, as far as the ability to look average would be, saying it mildly right there.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me if any of that crew that they got is going to look like an average NBA point guard in time. So that's obviously an option I would lean towards. Do you have enough athletes and defenders in Houston that could make up for his mistakes? No, you're probably saying no on that one. Then, like you said, if Sacramento says no, then really there's not a whole plethora of opportunities waiting for him, unless you're thinking something like I don't know, maybe even just go somewhere else where he's not going to be making a big impression. But yeah, if he holds out and maybe the I guess the reprieve of expansion comes, I know we still have to talk about. He will pick up that final year on his contract and hope he can lead an expansion team. But you're right, the amount of teams that would be interested in him are few and far between. I'm New Orleans, no, because you've got Fears there, and you've got like two other point guards, high price point guards that you played for. There's just not a plethora of options for you to go ahead and commit to. But I don't. Trey Young, I don't want to totally give up on, but I just think the situation in Atlanta has already run its course.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. Both sides today kind of put out their own independent statements like, hey, we're willing to move on. Like it's kind of just seems like both sides are ready to go on. A place that I don't think they'll trade for him. It hasn't been mentioned. I haven't seen it anywhere, but in theory, I like it. I'd have to look more into it. I just thought of this. Why doesn't Toronto try to do something? Like with Emmanuel Quickley's contract that's awful back, and maybe another salary match or something. I mean, he's clearly better than Emmanuel Quickley, and they're the same kind of player where it's kind of like not very good defensively, need the ball a lot. But Toronto has the defensive pieces around him to insulate him, and they could use, I think, like a high volume scorer like that. They don't really, that's a pretty good team, and the guy they have for that is Emmanuel Quickley, and Trey Young's just a lot better than him.
And Trey Young, like Ingram, pretty good in the clutch with,
Yes.
if you get them close enough, those two both like to make those shots, both like to take those shots. So I could see that happening. But another team that I was just thinking that hit my head as well is the Clippers. Before the aspiration clock runs out. And, could you see yourself moving off of Kawhi because you're you're worried about either having his contract voided or suspended, and moving off of him, if you're in and putting him on a team like Atlanta and just saying, you know what, we're going to build around Trey for the future. We're going to get rid of Harden. We're going to move on from those pieces because right now the only viable, if you do not trade Kawhi for anything, if there's, and I think there is a market now for Kawhi the way he's played recently. Although again, buyer beware on that one with aspiration and his injury history. And then Harden has some limited value as well. But if you don't want to trade Ivica Zubac, which is the only player I see that you can get really a nice plethora of assets for, then a Trey Young is someone that at least is like you talked about. He is a name, he is a familiar thing, and for those expensive seats there in that brand spanking new arena, having a familiar name replacing those older familiar names might be something that Steve Ballmer might have to go ahead and resort to.
If you would have said that 2.5 weeks ago, I think I maybe would have been on board, but the Clippers are just rolling right now. They're just
But they
playing.
were.
Did they lose tonight?
They lost over the weekend.
Well,
they got shut down by the Celtics, who was our next topic.
Yeah, that game was. I actually watched that game. Now that you mentioned it, it was. We're going to talk about the Celtics here in a minute, and Jaylen, and I'm sure delve in on just how awesome Jaylen Brown's been this season. But I still think they're playing really well in a whole. They played tonight, I think. I don't know if they won.
They're playing Golden State right now as we speak. They are 6 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and they're up by 1 over Golden State.
Yeah, so we'll assume that the math's out and they win that one. But I mean, they're just playing too well right now, I think. And I just think Kawhi's playing. I wonder if Kawhi does even have any trade value still because of this thing looming over. Like, he's such an unknown, and I think he would already be a risky trade proposition just with his injury history and kind of Uncle Dennis and all this stuff that comes with having Kawhi Leonard on your team. And then now there's also this, like, what if he gets suspended for a seat? Like, who knows? Like, you're trading for a guy who's already physically, I mean, he's playing insanely well right now, but really he's past his prime, most likely. He's been hurt on and off for 4 years, and he has an investigation. So I don't know. I just think I just let it sit if I was the Clippers. You're finally playing well. You got your Derek Jones back. We'll see what happens when they get Zubac back. That last play-in spot is like Portland, Utah, Clippers. Like it's a very.
They lost Derek Jones, I believe, Jr. again.
Did he get hurt again?
He got hurt again. Yes.
Oh well, they had him back.
They had him back. Like I said, I had used him in a Lakers trade, but no sooner did I put him in a Lakers mock trade than he got injured once again. So I just wanted to leave it at that. But the Clippers did win, so they're now 13-22 on the season.
Yeah, so they're just playing it a lot better right now. So, I mean, it really feels like the public. It feels like it's going to Washington. That just seems like where the momentum's headed. It seems like it's going to be some combination of CJ McCollum's expiring contract and some other stuff, and we'll see what happens. And I think it's really a pretty good. If what I saw from it might have been Jake Weinbach. I don't know if it was a guy who like hammering home like, well, it's fact if he tweeted it. To be completely fair, but I saw somewhere that they're definitely not going to have to give up a lot of draft compensation. And if they could get maybe a protected pick back or something just for Atlanta to move up the salary, because I think Trey Young is likely to pick up that option no matter where he's at, just because he's not going to be able to get that type of money. Maybe again, definitely not in the free agent market this summer. And so I think if you're Washington and you're able to get anything of an asset and you get Trey Young, who for all his faults is going to go to Washington, be high usage, and give you probably 28 and 11. I just think that's that's one of the better uses we've seen of the team with cap space, in my opinion. So I'd really be pretty pro Washington getting Trey Young.
Okay. Make sure you have him on your fantasy team if that happens.
I do. He's on my fantasy team.
There you go. See, that was the real motivation behind your statement. Now it comes to light. But it is, of course, NBA observations. If you guys have thoughts on what we've talked about with OKC or Trey Young, we'd love you to leave it below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it as far as concerned. Or do you have another destination in mind for Trey Young? Please let us know. I know Miami could be interesting because Miami kind of that feels like a Miami thing to take a chance on a Pat Riley thing to take a chance on a guy like Trey Young. I'm just putting that out there as well. But looking at the rest of the league, we mentioned Boston again. Boston came over the weekend and shut the Clippers down, stopped that winning streak. Although the Clippers have since won again, they just won now over Golden State by one. But the Celtics are red hot, and they've vaulted themselves into second place in the East with the victory tonight, and then also the loss for Detroit. Loss by New York at Detroit. So yes, New York lost to Detroit, and Boston won, vaulting them into second place. I hate talking about the Celtics with a passion, but I must talk about them when whether it's really good or really bad like this because it's NBA observations. Jaylen Brown, I had a conversation last night, and if you still put it today, I would put Jaylen Brown fourth on my MVP. But after kind of 3 weeks he's had, where it's just absolutely been the best player on the court, period. I cannot, whatever jersey he puts on, doesn't matter. He has been the best player on the court on both sides of the ball as the best two-way player. He said himself he's the best two-way player in the game. I don't know about that. I'll just say in the past 3 weeks, it's hard to argue against him on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. It seems like it feels like unless the Thunder really take a slide and something actually is going wrong with this injury to Nikola Jokic, it probably is SGA's MVP to lose at this point, just with how dominant of a regular season team OKC still really is tracking to be, even with the recent lull. But after that, it's like if the Lakers are like the 6th seed or something, like Luka's a really awesome individual statistical talent, and I mean, no one would argue that. But if Boston wins 50 some games and is like the 2 seed or 1 seed in the East, it's going to be hard to put anyone other than Jaylen Brown second, assuming Jokic doesn't meet the games played minimum. It's really a 2-man race this season, it feels like, same as it was last year. And so I think if Jokic plays 65 games exactly, he'll be second and maybe still have a chance to win. But if he doesn't meet that threshold, I think it's just kind of SGA probably going to run away with it. But after that, I think it's up. And Jaylen Brown's playing at a level right now. I was looking at his stats, highly efficient, limiting his turnovers at the highest level he's ever played on defense. And all of it passes every eye test when you watch him. Like these aren't open. He's making hard shots. And the thing that he's added some stuff to his game. And the thing that's really interesting and really pretty impressive about Boston is this may have changed of late, but if you just look at Derek White's stats on the season, their second best player, borderline all-star type of guy, he has not played as well as he has in the past few years, efficiency-wise. So I don't know that we've seen the best of Boston yet still. And there's just these ever persistent rumors about what if Jason Tatum comes back. And so we'll see if that somehow happens and he can be 80% of himself, 70% of himself for the playoffs. This is a team that can win the East as it's currently playing, I believe. And that's not maybe the statement it has been in past years, but that's still this team's so much better than I think either one. I mean, I was pretty bullish on the Celtics, but by bullish, I meant I thought they'd win 44 games. Like I didn't think we'd be talking about them as a finals contender this season.
Absolutely. You and I both. But what happens, like you said, when Jason Tatum comes back? Does Brown's game still continue to excel at an extremely high level, or does it take a step back? We'll have to wait and see. But even does, let's just say it does take a step back when Jason Tatum comes back. At least now you've got a sample size. If you're Jaylen Brown, if you want to go somewhere else, or if you want to lean yourself somewhere else and be a number one guy somewhere else, because you've had a taste of it about being the number one guy. And for him, so far, what we're seeing, it's probably tasting really good right now. He asked on the plane heading to the Clippers land, wanted to go ahead and face off against and be the primary defender against Kawhi Leonard, and did an outstanding job while still scoring 30 plus points against the Clippers. And again, he's playing at extremely high level. I was very upset that he didn't get Eastern Conference Player of the Month, and I would be rightly too. But uh, seeing him play at this level, it's just really, as a Lakers fan, I think it sucks. But as if someone who sees as far as the NBA, it's just someone that, again, if Tatum comes back and tries to reinsert himself as a number one, interesting dynamic, because those two have played with each other for such a long time. Does one take a step back, or does one go ahead and they try to work with each other as a cooperative level, which, as you and I both know, that doesn't always work itself out.
No, it doesn't. But I think that those guys, with their championship pedigree and almost a decade together now, I think they'd probably be able to figure it out. But I had the same thought earlier, even before you brought because I was thinking I usually err on the side of when you've had so much team success and you're as old as those guys are, they'll figure it out. But Jaylen Brown is playing at such a crazily, he's been he would be a lock for all NBA first team if the season ended right now. That's the type of season we're talking about. And so
he's number 4 on my list right now as far as MVP. And if, like I said, if he continues to play at, if the team continues to be at the number 2 level, or even take over first place in the Eastern Conference, he now has to be talked about at that level. You're talking top 3 right there with Luka. So again, it's something people have to take note, because Jaylen Brown, whether you say he's the hot guy of the moment, as far as the hot player of the moment, it means he is playing at an extraordinary level. So we have to see how that works itself out when Jason Tatum comes back, and if they can maintain that high level of Boston, which right now looks to be sustainable right now for the foreseeable future. And in the Eastern Conference, where you've got all those patsies, for lack of a better term, that you could play against. Man, that was a tough game that we played against San Antonio. Thank God we have Brooklyn next on the schedule. So yes, absolutely can stay at that level, what they're at now, for the foreseeable future and the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, rightfully, Jaylen Brown is getting all this attention, and he deserves every bit of it. But this has been a team of the real shocking thing with this team is I think everyone assumed Jaylen Brown would take some statistical step up as the number 1 option this season. Now, to this point, and with the efficiency he's done it, I don't think anyone foresaw. But I think that him being a really prolific scorer and offensive player is not really that surprising. But the rise of Neemias Queta has been huge for them, for a team that really went into the season with no bigs of note. It was kind of just Luka Garza, guys who had never really played in the NBA. And Queta is good, and he plays 25 minutes a game, and he's a real plus. I mean, he's a really good rebounder. He can put his hands up on defense. Derek White is actually leading their team.
Utah gave up on him. Literally gave up on him.
Yeah, and so there's him, and then Peyton Pritchard's taken his game up another level, and even this rookie they have, Hugo Gonzalez, is giving him 15 minutes a game, and he was, I think, maybe picked 29 or 30. They just are really finding guys that were kind of out of left field or not expected. If you would have said, so there's going to be a new player on Boston this season, and they're going to be and they're going to heavily contribute and average double-digit points and be a really important player for the team, Anthony Simons would have been minus 2,500 to be that player, and he doesn't really hardly play some games because Joe Mazzulla can't stand him on defense.
But tonight against Chicago, he was the star player and scored 27 on the day that Jaylen Brown really struggled.
But and then he still has that flamethrower ability off the bench or as a spot starter, and so if Tatum comes back and there's not a clash, because I usually err on the side of they'll figure it out, but Tatum is usually this guy that Brown is right now. He's usually the guy who's 3rd in MVP and a lock for all NBA first team, and that's just flipped. And now it's really going to be really interesting to see how they figure that out with Tatum off an Achilles injury and with Brown playing so well, and Tatum probably just not really being back to his full self yet. How that impacts that chemistry this season and for the future if Jaylen Brown were able to maintain his level of play with a maybe not 100% of himself, Jason Tatum, back. But this team is so fascinating because it's Jaylen Brown playing awesome is awesome. And I mean, it's always great to see guys most improved players not for this really thing historically, but he really, if it was what it like the name of it is, this is a guy who, in my opinion, this season has maybe gone up 2 levels. Like he was like a borderline third team All NBA, definite All Star guy, and now he is All NBA first team, gonna get MVP votes, one of the 5 best players in the league right now, and offensively again was to be expected. Him playing at this level defensively while he took his game up multiple levels on both sides. So enough just can't be said about what Jaylen Brown's doing right now. But it's the role players have been equally as important to why the team point. I think they have the highest point differential in the East by a lot now, and I mean they just are rolling.
It'll be interesting to see when all of those extensions kick in Boston and this team gets even more expensive than it does now, how well they'll continue to flow, especially with that Tatum Brown. And once Tatum gets back to like Kevin Durant level, where Kevin Durant came back from that injury and came back to a really, really good and a really, really high level. I wouldn't say one of the best players in the world level, but a really really elite scorer level. So I could see that for Jason Tatum. So we'll see what happens as far as him really being, something to worry about once again for all of us Lakers fans. So again, Boston Celtics are now riding a wave and riding high in second place in the East. But to the teams that are not doing as well, we don't really touch on this subject too much, but I always love to, when it does come around, talk about it, especially when it comes to the Lakers. We always talk about it, when a Laker coach is on the hot seat, because JJ's seat was getting a little warm for a little while there, but it's kind of cooled off for now. He's right now the team's going back and forth between third, fourth, and fifth. So I get, right now it's okay. He's not in hot water at this time. It's the oven's been turned off for now, but the hand is still nearby. I'll just say that. But when it comes to the rest of the league, there are coaches out there that are in hot water. I don't think we've had a firing or a dismissal as of yet, strangely enough, and we've already started the new year. I will start with you, my friend. Where is the first seat that's warm, so warm that you think it will be time to get off the seat with a coach being fired? Who do you think is the first NBA coach that will be let go?
This is tough for me because I feel like NBA firings so often kind of come out of left field, especially when they're during the season. They
Wasn't
just
too
kind of
tough for me. Mine came almost instantly, but go
okay.
ahead.
You go first. You go first then, because
Sacramento, Doug Christie.
oh, I forget they exist sometimes. I tend to agree. I tend to agree. He's an absolutely terrible NBA head coach.
I don't know what he's doing.
No, solid playing career, but that was your involvement in basketball, and it should have ended there.
It should have ended there because, I have no idea. The only smart move is putting Maxime Renault in the starting lineup and seeing what can happen there. And he has been the breakthrough player, one of 3 in that second round. That is really making Rob Pelinka look really, again, like a less than great GM as far as traded twice and flew right over Maxime Renault in that draft, and also Diawara, and also Will Richard of Golden State. Just wanted to mention that. But getting back to Doug Christie, I mean, he is just, some of his rotations are just weird. Keon Ellis, who is, again, we've talked about, everybody outside of the NBA is just like looking at Keon Ellis and saying, man, we really love to have him. One day he's playing, one day he's starting, one day he sits down. Malik Monk, a guy who they spent a lot of money on, out of the rotation. Dennis Schroeder, benched and still playing, but benched in favor of Russell Westbrook. And the fascination with Russell Westbrook, when we think Russell Westbrook runs out of places to go, there's always just one more pair of eyes that seem to be still fascinated with him. And then, of course, Zach LaVine, the way, and DeMar DeRozan, it just, it's just not clicked at all. The injury to Sabonis hasn't helped their team, but he has done a miserable job. His rants, I know that a lot of people talk about JJ Redick's rants, and you're right if you really don't like them, because guess what? We don't like them either. But Doug Christie's rants, or supposed to call him Douglas Christie. I think he's had one where he formally said, "My name is Douglas Christie," or whatever.
Doesn't matter.
It's just become asinine, and like you said, they almost become irrelevant at this point in time.
Willie Green got fired. I remember.
That's right. Yes,
I remembered that when you said, "Well, at least he's playing Maxime Renaud now," because they weren't playing Derek Queen, who's awesome, and that jogged my memory.
Yes, Willie Green was fired first. Yes, so my bad on that. Yes, absolutely. So please don't at me in the comments. If that was done quickly, like in the first 5 or 6 games.
Yeah.
Like I said, we just completely forgot about that one too. So
Yeah,
where would you go next, my friend? Or well, if you want to speak on Doug Christie, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he's an awful head coach. Before I go any further, but I do just feel for anyone who coaches the Sacramento Kings, because if you just look at this roster, like there's names, none of whom play defense in 2026 now. And I mean, with Westbrook, like he has his flaws, and he's just not really anywhere. I mean, he probably, I don't know, but I mean, for that team, I think it's fine. Like he's productive. He's a better playmaker than Dennis Schroeder, who they just really overpaid. And if Schroeder's not going to make his threes on a consistent basis, I just don't know what he's really overpaid in that circumstance. There's a reason he got traded like 4 times last season. I don't know why they decided to give him as much money as they did. But yeah, I mean, next, I don't know. It's hard for me to really put together much of an intelligent thought on the Kings, because nothing about them has been intelligent in quite some time. But I just, I mean, I'm glad Westbrook's still in the NBA. Obviously has a special place in my fandom heart there for his years in OKC. He did become the highest scoring point guard in NBA history the other day, passing Oscar Robertson. So, he's going to be an interesting legacy to look back at, but that is not what we're doing right now. And my next one, I don't know. I felt like this really would have been Ty Lue until about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
For me.
I was good. Would have said the same thing.
Geez, I don't know. I guess I'll just go across the country there and go to Brian Keefe in Washington. I don't know that
like
he
low hanging fruit though.
It is, but I feel like that's kind of what it is. Like I mean, ones that would be interesting, like does Orlando maybe get sick of what's going on with Jamal Mosley? There's been rumors of that, but I don't feel like they're at a point where they're going to fire a coach midseason, Other ones like, I don't know, the Lakers are I mean, you said Redick's seat is, I mean, the Lakers coach is always going to be under heavier scrutiny than any other coach. It's just kind of the way it goes.
I think he's fine for now, but one bad month could change that, especially with our fan base. Because you see little fire JJs every now and then, depending on whether we win or lose, whatnot. But all it takes is just one more stretch like they had, or a couple more stretches like they had in December, and they fall out of the top 5 conversation. Yeah, then it could change real quickly.
I mean, I guess one that he wouldn't get fired, but this is going to be something I don't really believe this will happen. But if we want to get a little bit more interesting and takey here, if I just woke up to notification one day that Steve Kerr had like just retired from coaching, I wouldn't be completely shocked by it. That just really feels like, it just feels like he's constantly upset about something, or the fans are upset at him, or Jonathan Kuminga hates him, or whatever. There's just always feels like the last 3 years there's always been something.
Green,
yes,
love fest, yeah.
So that would be one that I think maybe would be out of left field that I could see. Golden State would never fire him, and they never should. But if he just kind of maybe went into the owner's office and he's like, "Hey, listen, I kind of think I want to go make equivalent money to be a broadcaster somewhere. I think I'm good on this. Because, I mean, their fans got mad at him because before they played OKC and rested their whole team on national television a few days ago, he kind of said, like, guys, we're just not really going to compete with, like, OKC anymore, basically, which is true. Like, he's not lying. He's talking about the realities of the situation, but obviously as a fan base, especially one that's been as spoiled as Golden State has the last decade, they're not going to want to hear anything like that. So I don't know. He would be one, but in terms of fired, I don't know. It feels like Doug Christie like really is running away with the horrific head coach ranking, like the title. Like this is truly like 1973 Dolphins levels of like this is the worst coach in the league by so much. Like you said, his rotations don't make sense. The roster doesn't make sense. They're terrible due to the like just relative to the talent on the team. They're still probably underachieving because they do have like good players, I guess, but they're just a lot of good players who do not lead to winning. So it's kind of he's in a tough spot with the roster, but he's also a bad coach. Other than that, I mean, I can't really think of many teams that are like really dramatically underachieving this season. That would be because like Atlanta, I think is underachieving, but like Quinn Snyder's clearly they're not going to fire Quinn Snyder.
He was one I was thinking about. But the one I'm thinking about the most is Chicago Bulls with Billy Donovan, because who's been there a while, and they've tried very hard to stretch the term mediocre into something monumental there in the Windy City. Possibly moving aside any statues or any monuments dedicated to Michael Jordan and put in monuments dedicated to mediocrity there, the way that's been over the past few years. And
the giant sign that says "play in" on it.
Yes, or 38 wins. There you go. Here we go. How much longer do you want that? Because Billy Donovan's been there a while. He's been there a while, and the culture hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. I would get rid of the front office first, but he should go right along with it, because I think they just need if any team needs a fresh start, the Chicago Bulls need a fresh start.
The Bulls are a passion point of mine, okay, for a few reasons. One, I obviously watched a lot of basketball games with Billy Donovan on the coaching staff. And when OKC finally moved off, whatever, I don't think it was a firing. I think it might have been one of the mutual parting of ways situations. I remember I was watching Colin Cowherd. The Thunder were clearly about to delve into a tank. And he's saying, they're going to regret this. This is a great coach. And this is an aside that it's not really that big of a deal, but I have never seen a coach who has coached for so long and is so respected that has less of a bag of inbound play. This guy cannot coach an inbounds play. He cannot draw one up. And one of my other best friends also is a Bulls fan, and he said the same thing. It's maddening. And the Bulls are just like this in general. I stupidly early in the season bought in on this podcast, said, I think this is who they are. I think the Bulls are good. And looking back, I've never felt dumber talking about the NBA in my whole entire life. Why I ever bought in on the Chicago Bulls is beyond my wildest understanding. But I did. And now they're awful, they're right there in the middle where they belong to be. Josh Giddey's hurt. Kobe White's hurt. And I don't think they'll fire him because they do love mediocrity. Their owner is cheap, and they just signed an extension this summer. So they'd have to pay a pretty hefty buyout because the New York Knicks wanted to hire him, so they had to give him a raise and an extension. And for some reason, he has family. His son is the head coach of the Windy City Bulls. The Donovan family runs the Bulls. So I don't think they'll fire him, even though I couldn't agree with you more. If I became worth $20 billion, I would buy the Bulls, and I would fire everyone within 5 minutes of clearing the vote. I think they're horribly run. There's a chance that they were offered the Pelicans trade, the infamous Derek Queen trade at 12, and they declined it to take Essengay, who is a project on a team that does not develop players well and now is hurt for the whole season, I believe. They're just horribly run. I think Billy Donovan is fine. I think he's a fine floor-raising coach. But if you ever want to be anything beyond what they are, you either have to have spectacular players like a Russell Westbrook in his prime, a Kevin Durant in his prime. That's the only two times. I mean, I guess he did overachieve the 1 year with Chris Paul and with Shea in his second year. I'll give him that. That was most fun year us Thunder fans have had until the last two, which have now obviously been pretty great. But I get your sentiment, and I agree with you that his seat should have been. It should be so hot that it should already be melted to the core of the earth and melted, and he should be gone in it. He should just not be coaching in the NBA anymore. But their owner's cheap, and he just signed an extension, so I don't think it's coming. And even though he does not deserve to be an NBA head coach, and hasn't for quite some time, in my opinion.
I've got one more, just in case. Again, they've been playing okay as of late, but 5-5 in the last 10. But I think they should be, now that they're one of their top players is back to relatively decent health. I'm expecting them to go on a run, and if they don't, then maybe by the end of or midway through February, you might start to see that seat getting a little bit warmer, and that's in Philadelphia with Nick Nurse, because that team, I think, now that Embiid is dunking, and okay, I'm sorry, he got a dunk, so let's not put that in too much of a context, but he got a 30 spot, and he's been averaging well over 20 in the last 5 games. You have Tyrese Maxey there. VJ Edgecombe is now playing once again. He hit his rookie wall. He slammed right in it and is now breaking through it once again. He's had some really good performances, but yet they're still 5-5 in their last 10. So that kind of concerns me, Caleb. Again, they're only 19 and are they 19 and 15? I think they're all right now. I told you earlier this season that I'm not going to predict anything when it comes to Philadelphia. They're all over the map for me after I predicted them to be the title holders last year. I thought they were really set to go a long way, and that blew up in my face. Like you talked about with the Bulls, that one was my Chicago Bulls of last year. So with that, again, I could be anywhere, but I think if it doesn't, with a healthier, quote unquote, Embiid, who's out there on the floor getting you 20 to 30 points a game, if you can't ride that into a much more prolific record, or at least get you in the conversation for the top 4 a little bit more clearly, then you might want to start looking at ways to make changes quick enough and in February, and maybe one of them would be Nurse.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty notoriously prickly too. Like, I think that if things go south there, they'll go south quick. Like, I don't think it would last long if things started to sour a little bit. So I think that's a good one. Really, I think.
What about Doc though? What about Doc in Milwaukee?
I just think Milwaukee's
get a whole lot better with Giannis.
I just think Milwaukee's been such a just mess with injuries and trade requests and buying out Damian Lillard to sign like the 14th best center in the NBA. Like, they just are literally just trying stuff to try and keep Giannis happy from year to year. And I don't know. I think Doc got overrated, then was probably properly rated for like a year or two. And then now I think Doc's fine. I think he's a fine head coach in the NBA. And so
just don't have his team up 3-1.
Yeah. Avoid that situation. You'll probably be fine. But I think that Nick Nurse honestly is a pretty good one, because I think Philly is probably just going to be pretty good, because we talked about Jaylen Brown earlier. We should also talk about Tyrese Maxey. He's another guy who's just really taken a few more leaps up this season, and also would probably be right there on that cusp of a first-team All-NBA guy. And saying if Joel Embiid can stay healthy for the whole season is kind of like saying if I go buy a Powerball ticket and win tomorrow. Like, it just is not really a very statistically realistic thing to believe in.
But he's playing now, and he's playing well now.
Yes.
And you have Paul George as a body out there on the court. You have virtually most of the entire roster that you had planned on having last year, plus VJ Edgecombe in this year. Quentin Grimes has been playing well. I mean, these guys are playing well, and has to start equating to consistent winning, especially like we talked about in the East, where you should be feasting in the Easting.
I'm completely agree. I was going but the second that you likely don't win that Powerball ticket and Embiid sprains his knee, or hopefully not worse, but who knows, and misses 25 games, all of a sudden maybe things go south, because then you're starting Adem Bona and Andre Drummond and guys who they're fine, but probably not starting centers on a good team. Paul George really has fit in pretty well. His stats aren't very flattering, but he really seems to be buying into what they want to do, and he's fitting in pretty well relative to the stage of career he's at. But if he gets hurt again, I think if things go south there, they could go south really quick, and then we'll see what happens with Nick Nurse. So I honestly think that's a pretty good one. Another one, kind of in the vein of Steve Kerr, is I think because of the just insane nature of what's happened there the last year, that Jason Kidd would probably be safe, and the fact they went to the finals not too long ago.
I was looking at them, but yeah, that's a hard one.
But I have seen or maybe listened to somewhere before that there's been some mention of like maybe he moves into the front office and they type of deal. And so I guess that's not really a seat being hot or a firing, but if that happened, maybe after the season, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked, just because they seem pretty hell-bent on trading Anthony Davis, which I know you are in support of. You hate.
I don't know if I would be supportive answering that phone call for someone that's oft injured, that at the end of his contract, he wants an extension, and B, $65 million at the end of that deal for a guy nicknamed Street Clothes is not that pleasant. The call that I would like to have, but I would just tell you, when you say when you look at Jason Kidd, and those rumors are consistent with what has been talked about, even right around the Nico firing, about him moving into the front office. Guess who the assistant coach is?
Michael Finley's in their front office. I don't know who the assistant coach is.
Frank Vogel.
Oh, geez. Frank. He's like a cockroach.
Yeah,
just keeps hanging around.
Well, that cockroach did win a title, and I think he was still, to this day, you ask many Lakers fans, he was unfairly let go in LA at the Lakers. I think he deserved another season and better offensive head coach, I will say. As far as an offensive coach would have been nice for him. But I still think he deserved better than the way he was treated by the organization. But his assistant coach was Jason Kidd. So everything circles back around in the NBA. So Frank Vogel is the assistant coach. I think he's still getting a paycheck from Phoenix, I believe, as well. Yeah, for him being, again, could have been given another season there in Phoenix as well, because who came right after didn't do much better than he did, I don't think did better than he did. No,
he did worse.
He did worse.
He did worse, yeah,
and he got fired too. But now Jordan Ott seems to be like someone they're really rallying around. So again, it worked out for Phoenix. So that's something we'll probably talk about here in the next couple of weeks, is how Phoenix is doing. But yeah, I just think that, again, it's something that's a possibility with Jason Kidd. It wouldn't be a firing per se. It would just be, like you said, seems like the organization and the ownership like him and preferred him over Nico for the future. And I'm assuming that future means going up. And I don't know, I would say still give Michael Finley a chance in the front office, but if it seems like more and more that Jason Kidd moving into the GM slot would not be something unheard of, or not, it would be very believable, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, Dallas is just lucky to be in the spot they're in after what they did. Just so we don't need to rehash that. Everyone knows that, but I just can't believe them. That just for some reason really just stuck with me. Flag is so good. I was watching them the other day. He's going to be such a multi-time all-star, all-NBA guy to me. He's so good. But I think Kidd probably ends up eventually doing that. I don't know if it'll be like this season or next. I don't know when, but I do think that's probably eventually something that happens, unless maybe things really go south and he gets fired as the coach. But I think he eventually ends up there. And the last one, I do think we still need to mention Ty Lue, because they're playing so well. He's probably not going to get fired due to performance, but he did have his name come up in the poker stuff with Chauncey Billups. They do have this aspiration thing. Someone's head is going to end up rolling for what's going on with the Clippers. And
I think it's going to be Lawrence Frank.
It probably should be Lawrence Frank. And
for for the press conference alone that he had after he let go Chris Paul. That is, dude, shave before you go ahead out like that. Just like you look like someone that just fired someone at 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern
Yeah, at an
Standard Time.
airport. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just, just, and I was surprised because he's never presented himself in that way. I've never seen him as a coach or as a GM presented himself in that way. It just looked like a slob. Just looked like if you and I just got off the couch after a long, hard weekend of drinking and just say, "Yeah, we're going to go ahead and be GM the Clippers," and there you go. But I think it'll be him first before Ty Lue. But I could see Ty Lue and the Clippers after this season if it doesn't go a whole lot better. Uh, like you talked about with Billy Donovan, having that mutual parting of the ways.
Yeah, the likelihood with the Clippers, despite this positive run, is like it's going to be a success that they're not going to give top 5 lottery odds to OKC, I guess. But really, this season is still likely going to end in disappointment because kind of like Embiid, and I'm not wishing this upon anyone, but the likelihood is that Kawhi Leonard's going to miss a chunk of games at some point. That's just what we've been told at this point. And they really were putting a lot of strain on James Harden at the beginning of the season that he's had hamstring issues the last half decade since he got to Brooklyn. That could come up again. They already are missing Zubats. Derek Jones has missed a ton of time. And really a big part of why they beat Portland last week solely because Brook Lopez made 9 threes in a quarter, which is just like, I get it happens. Like yesterday, the real, like outside of that awesome shot from Devin Booker and some mismanagement down the stretch from OKC, like Jordan Goodwin made 8 threes, I think. Like that just, I mean, that's just why that's really.
Oh boy, we heard about that being a former Laker and him not being on the Lakers instead of Marcus Smart. Yes, we heard about that on the show.
Yeah, well, you probably should have heard about it. Then Marcus Smart, imagine the backcourt of Marcus Smart and him, and maybe not instead of an elevated South Bay.
Well, they had to let go of Goodwin and the money he was owed in order to pay for Marcus Smart because Marcus Smart fit under the semi-and just it was because of how much they had to pay Marcus Smart and what he agreed to. They had to let go of 2 guys, and one of those guys was Jordan Goodwin.
I would just say that there's a guard on roster who maybe serves less of a purpose to the team, but has to be on it.
Again, you all depends how you look at it. A lot of people are happy with Marcus Smart on the Lakers, but like you talked about with, of course, Embiid and Kawhi, it's not a question of if, but a question of when. Marcus Smart hurts himself again, but Goodwin is having a solid season. Had a terrific game against OKC. But with that, any other suggestions on some coaches you think could be in the hot seat before not too long?
I don't think so. I really think the NBA is in a pretty good spot, coach. I don't think there's a lot of just like dismal head coaches right now. I think Christie's just miserable. Brian Keefe, we don't really like. He's probably not good, but we also don't know. Like it's not as if he's had a ton of talent to work with. I guess we'll see what he can do with Trey Young here in a few days.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, but like Brooklyn sucks, but there's no doubt that their coach is really good. Like they have a really good coach. Same with Utah.
Jordi Fernandez, I like. I know, like you said, he's never been given a team around him to do so, but I think a lot of people in the league would like to have a coach like Jordi Fernandez, and I'll leave it at that.
One more that I guess we should probably just mention Chris Finch. Okay. I wrote like 3 years ago already now for the Minnesota Timberwolves SB Nation website for a season, their first Rudy Gobert year. And therefore, I've just been permanently on Timberwolves Twitter ever since, which was a delight during the playoffs and every time they play OKC in general. But their fans are really getting pretty tired of them, which surprises me because it's not as if again, I've mentioned this before on the show. I'm a Browns fan. We fired Kevin Stefanski today, and I don't think Kevin Stefanski was a great head coach, but I also can't really argue with the fact he's really been the only one who's ever been successful since 1999. Mm-hmm. With Minnesota, it's like Finch has his warts. I think a coach sets the tone and the leadership and maybe the vibe and the calm, cool collectedness of a team. And maybe this is just because I usually see Chris Finch when he's playing the Thunder, who he just has a conniption every time they play. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. But we know about that team's late game meltdowns. It's their whole thing. It has been for a few years. They just really soil themselves late in games over and over again. And I don't think it's maybe a coincidence that he can fly off the handle emotionally, and maybe that seems like somewhat of an emotionally immature teams at time. We know about Jaden McDaniels punching walls and breaking hands and all sorts of weird stuff. So I don't think he'll get fired because this is the best run they've ever had in the history of their franchise. But I do think their fans are sick of him. They do, the way they lose is often just some weird coaching decision, like weird non-discipline, things like that a lot of times get pointed back to coaching. So yeah, he's the last one. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he should be fired. I don't think he will be fired. But I do think, similar to Ty Lue, I think it would be unwise to just not even bring him up, because I do think that there's some chance that if they do get maybe bounced in the first round and have a game in the playoffs where they really crap the bed late, which is almost guaranteed due to the way they lose games all the time in the regular season, that maybe that conversation could at least be had.
So if you guys out there have any thoughts on any coaches that you think are on the hot seat or could be on the hot seat very soon, let us know in the comments below. And truly appreciate you watching. Calif, it's always great to have you here. You said you were you were on the road, so that's why we had to record late again, but you were on the road. So what's going on with the work you're doing at of course, your outlets that you cover, including the Swap Report as well?
Yeah, New Century Press, all my schools just got done with their winter break, so really busy full week with them this week, going around taking pictures and stuff. Swap Report, I'm starting to kind of collect and do some work on a Chet Holmgren piece, because he's in really the midst of this kind of bleh run from OKC the last few weeks. He really seems to have taken a bit of a half leap up, or maybe a full. He's kind of, I think, in that borderline top 20 player in the NBA area now, and the offense is really starting to come along, and it's really been that way this whole season. Really, what he's been this season is kind of what he looked like last season before he got hurt against Golden State early in the year last year. But I wanted to wait to do anything with it until really there was a good chunk of time when Jalen Williams was back, and see maybe how that dynamic ended up working itself out. And I still don't think really there's a final answer to that, because Jalen Williams just has not really been himself quite yet. But Chet Holmgren has taken an offensive leap. To those who maybe don't watch the Thunder every day, the numbers aren't way different. But he just looks so much. He's always tried to do off the dribble. His favorite player was clearly Kevin. He tries to play like Kevin Durant, but he's not near as fluid, or it does not come that does not come super naturally to him. I am reading the book of basketball right now. I bought it last week. I'm reading it. And in there, Bill Simmons writes about the Greg Oden, Kevin Durant thing. And this really sprung to mind. I was driving today back from Lennox. This came into my head a few hours ago. And he said in there, like, he had talked to Danny Ainge, whatever, when he was the GM of the Celtics. And he just said, usually when tall people, they're like, humans aren't supposed to be as tall as these guys are. Like, it's just that there's so few, our bodies are not really made to be this long and tall. And a lot of times you'll see these NBA guys that are tall walk around. It looked like it almost hurts to walk. Like they just kind of lumber around. And then he said he saw Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant just like glides through a room. He walks like he's 5'9", but he's 7 foot tall. Chet does not walk like he's 5'9". Chet walks like he's about 8 foot tall. And so he's not as smooth as he wants to be. And he's a great player either way. Again, I think he's a super winning player on top of all that. He does so many things that lead to winning, but that stuff that's never going to be on KD's level, despite his best efforts, is starting to come along a little bit. He's been a lot better in the mid-range this year, a lot higher volume in the mid-range. So I guess I'm kind of just spoiling all of what I'm going to write whenever I get around to it here in the next week. But I'm going to do something on kind of his offensive leap, I think, here soon. And that's kind of the thing I'm working on now. And then if OKC continues on this whole sputter tour they're doing, I'm going to have to maybe dive into why it's happening. So I'll definitely be doing something with Chet here in the next week. And if OKC continues to struggle, I guess you guys be on the lookout for that piece. I'm sure some of you will love to read that. So keep an eye out, I guess.
Absolutely. So go ahead and check out Calif's work today at the Swab Report and the New Century Press. Indeed. And absolutely appreciate you stopping by again. I guess we're going to have to hold off our conversation on expansion for another week. But I do want to get into detail on that because I know I talked about it a little bit with Legend, but I want to hear your thoughts as well more extensively on a, of course, expansion, if that's going to be a viable thing, because the decision's supposed to be made one way or the other this year, but we'll find out how that happens, and we'll find out what of course, Adam Silver says. But any last thoughts before we head on out?
I don't think so. I think we kind of covered all of it here. But yeah, I thought it was a good, interesting pod talking about a lot of different things today.
Absolutely. So I try to throw one in there, like, every now and then, like the hot seat one. I figured that would pique your interest on that. And then, of course, you added in what's happened to OKC because that just came up, very topical. Of course, the Trey Young thing fed itself. So, yeah, absolutely a great show indeed. Always when I have you on. And any more NBA observations this week will be for my schedule at the Consumer Electronics Show, guys out there, will be kind of tough. I will try to squeeze one in, but actually probably not going to be able to do it. But if I do get a chance, guys, I will go ahead and I'll pop one up before the week's up. But we'll wait and see. But this one's for you guys out there that need your NBA observations, your fix during the days off from Lakers basketball. Of course, the Lakers basketball post games will be on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm hoping the guys can cover for me on Tuesday. Otherwise, the Bellagio Wi-Fi better be good because I'll try to do my best on that from my phone. But we'll wait and see what happens with that. But Calif, great to have you here. Looking forward to bringing you back next week when we provide even more NBA observations right here on the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.